Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today is September 30, 2025, and it's a pretty significant date, geopolitically speaking.
It really is.
We're seeing this huge, almost unprecedented meeting happening right now in the U.S., but honestly, that's just one part of a much bigger, much more unstable global picture.
Absolutely.
So we've gathered quite a few sources, high-level strategy papers like France's RNS 2025, analyses from European think tanks, IRIS, IFRI, to try and piece together what the immediate future, say the next year, might look like. Our goal today is really to connect 5 major stress points that seem separate but maybe aren't.
And it's a tough goal because on the surface they do feel separate, don't they? A drone incident here, an economic report there.
Right.
But what our sources are telling us is that they're deeply interconnected. And it's all happening against this backdrop of, well, dissolving global security structures. We're trying to synthesize the outlook.
And for you listening, the sources we're leaning on, like IRIS, IFRI, and that French RNS 2025 review, they're looking at threats from a distinctly European viewpoint.
Yeah. And their consensus, it's stark. They see security degrading and fast.
That urgency, you
Yeah.
can feel it. So let's jump right in. Let's start with the most direct sort of physical threat Europe's been dealing with this past month, the aerial pressure.
Okay.
What exactly are we seeing on Europe's borders?
Well, we have to talk about the escalation. Since early September, it's not just routine probes anymore. It's a real intensification of pressure.
How so?
We're seeing multiple airspace violations across NATO's eastern flank, the Baltics. The sources detail, I think it was 19 drones over Poland intelligence and decoy types.
19. Wow.
Yeah, and at least one in Romania, several aircraft over Denmark, plus 3 Russian MiG-31s deep inside Estonian airspace for 12 minutes. That's significant.
Okay, analysts are pretty much calling this classic hybrid warfare, Ricola, right? What's the thinking there? What are the dual goals?
It's that ambiguity that makes it hybrid. Strategically, first, from a military perspective, it's about testing European defenses.
Seeing how they react.
Exactly. Force reaction times, collect intel. And the sources note many of these drones were decoy models, unarmed versions of armed drones.
So designed to provoke a response without actually starting a fight.
Precisely. And second, maybe even more importantly, it's about political and psychological destabilization, but done cheaply for Moscow.
How does that work?
By pushing right up against that threshold for armed aggression. The line that triggers NATO's Article 5, but not quite crossing it, it creates uncertainty. Makes it incredibly hard for countries to decide if and how to shoot back.
Which leads straight to this response problem you mentioned. Poland shot down, 4 out of the 19?
That's right.
But Denmark apparently took no kinetic action. Why the difference? Why the hesitation?
Well, it's a real dilemma. There are generally 3 big constraints they're working under. First, just operational risk.
Debris falling on people.
Exactly. Shooting something down over populated areas is risky. But second, there's this sheer economic absurdity of it. The cost asymmetry.
The cheap drone versus the expensive missile problem.
Right. Russia sends a drone costing maybe a few $1,000s. Europe has to potentially use interceptors costing millions. It's designed to drain resources, expose that capacity gap.
A gap Europe is trying to fill, I gather. That drone wall idea.
They're trying. The Baltic states proposed it. The European Commission backed it just this month. But it takes time and money.
Okay, so operational risk, cost. What's the third constraint?
It's the strategic signal. Restraint, which Europe might see as being careful, controlling escalation, can easily look like weakness or hesitation to an adversary.
Which might just encourage more probing.
Absolutely. It really demands a unified, fast response capability like electronic jamming, not just missiles. If Europe's defense stays fragmented, it just invites more of these tactics.
Okay, so Europe's under pressure, fueled by this calculated, low-cost harassment from Russia. Let's shift then to the source, Russia itself. We hear so much in the media about economic trouble, refineries getting hit, talk of collapse.
Right, the narrative of impending doom.
Yeah. But what do the serious analyses say about the system's actual resilience? Is Putin's power really ending soon because of this?
Well, what's fascinating is the evidence suggests the system is adapting, not collapsing. Analysts are talking about military Keynesianism, meaning the whole economy has been deliberately reoriented towards the war effort. The military-industrial complex, heavy industry like metals, resource extraction, they're getting huge prioritized orders.
And other sectors.
State aid, investment in services, tech, that's being cut back. It's not a healthy, balanced economy in the long run, obviously.
But it works for the war.
It's a functional, centralized war economy. Yes.
But how do they keep the population on board? especially during a conflict?
Through very direct economic incentives, particularly around recruitment. There's basically a competition set up between regions to show loyalty and get volunteers for the front.
Competition.
By offering huge recruitment bonuses. And this leads to, frankly, staggering increases in tax revenue in some regions, often poorer ones targeted for recruitment. We're talking boosts over 120% in places like Perm, Tula.
Wow, injecting massive cash into those specific areas, but surely that has downsides, long-term costs.
Oh, absolutely. The big one is inflation. All that cash chasing a limited supply of goods means prices soar. But maybe more critically, it's driving up debt.
How so?
Sources show a clear link. Areas with high military recruitment also have high rates of people taking out consumer loans, housing loans. Families are borrowing against these military bonuses.
So they become financially dependent on the war continuing.
Essentially, yes. The system is buying loyalty, but funding it with debt. It's unbalanced, stores up massive problems for the future. But crucially, the sources do not see this leading to an imminent collapse of the current power structure.
Just a system adapting, however precariously, to keep the conflict going longer than maybe we expected.
That's the assessment. Highly resilient in its own way.
Okay, that picture of calculated, if stressed, stability in Moscow is such a stark contrast to the upheaval we seem to be seeing elsewhere. Let's pivot to, well, the elephant in the global room.
The U.S.
The radical shift happening in the U.S. political military structure. And today, September 30th, 2025, this event at Quantico, Virginia. It's genuinely unprecedented, isn't it?
It really is historic. You have nearly 800 U.S. generals and admirals, flag officers, brigadier general, and up all summoned to Quantico by Pete Hegseth, the new Secretary of War.
And that title changed itself from defense to war. That's deliberate signaling.
Oh, absolutely. It echoes the pre-WWII era. It signals a focus on kinetic action, maybe unilateralism over alliances, and President Trump himself is attending. You just don't gather this much of your top command in one place, historically.
The sources are calling this the end point of a cultural revolution, even a purge. What's behind that language? What's actually happened?
It seems to be about enforcing political and ideological alignment. This meeting comes after Hegseth has already taken steps.
Like what?
We know there's been a 20% cut in four-star generals and admirals, a systematic removal of diversity and what they call PC programs in the services.
Hegseth has been quite public about this, hasn't he?
Very. His stated goal is to align the military hierarchy with the administration's political aims. It creates what the sources are calling institutional terror among the officer corps.
Meaning
officers feel they're being judged on political loyalty, not just competence. Hegseth famously said, "We are in the business of making war." It's a stark message.
What does that kind of internal pressure, that terror, do to decision-making at the top?
It creates a really difficult, maybe impossible moral dilemma for these officers. Do they obey political directives they might see as damaging the military's professionalism and neutrality?
Or risk being purged.
Exactly. It's a conflict between obedience to the current leadership and preserving the institution's integrity. It can be paralyzing.
And the view from outside the U.S., this huge meeting, the political realignment, must be setting off alarm bells everywhere.
Absolutely. Allies in Europe, Asia, they're extremely worried. Worried about the signals of unilateralism, the potential for some major military action being planned, maybe against Iran.
And just the basic security risk of having so many top commanders in one spot.
From a purely practical security standpoint, yes. It violates basic principles. It creates a temporary vulnerability, a decapitation risk, as some might coldly put it, that adversaries like China, Russia, Iran are surely noticing.
So the entire event just underscores that the U.S. role, the bedrock of global security we've known for decades, is actively being rewritten right now.
Yes.
So if the U.S. had going through this radical internal change signaling potential aggression, how does that instability ripple outwards? What does it mean for the active conflicts we watch every day? Ukraine and Gaza. Let's start with Ukraine.
Well, the key word there is still just uncertainty.
Right.
Especially about U.S. commitment.
There was talk of Trump maybe changing his tune on Ukraine, a volte-face.
There's been speculation, maybe some softening rhetoric, but strategic analysts are very cautious. They warn his declarations, well, they ne veulent pas engagement.
That's the French phrase, meaning?
Meaning his words don't equal a reliable commitment. It's a powerful indictment of the current state of transatlantic security. It feels like it's built on shifting sands right now.
But Europe, looking at that RNS 2025 review again, seems to see Ukraine's fate as existential for them, regardless of Washington.
Precisely. Europe is forging ahead. massive continuing budget and security aid to Kyiv. They see the outcome as absolutely critical to their own immediate security.
So the RNS view is basically transatlantic solidarity is doubtful. Europe needs to look after itself.
That's the strong implication. The relationship is shaky, even if European commitment to Ukraine itself remains firm.
Okay, and finally, the Middle East. The grinding conflict around Gaza. How does all this connect?
Well, the regional crises are deeply linked, especially since the direct, intense war between Israel and Iran that happened in 2024-25, which our sources document.
How did that change things?
It seems to have really hardened Israel's strategic thinking. The preference now is heavily weighted towards military security-first solutions for regional problems, rather than political ones.
And the idea of a two-state solution.
Our sources basically call the old dream of two states chimerical, illusory, imaginary. It's just not seen as viable in the current strategic environment.
So the core Palestinian issue remains unresolved, a source of conflict.
Completely unaddressed. And it continues to fuel the fragility across the entire Middle East.
Wow. We have covered a truly dizzying amount of ground today. From hybrid attacks testing Europe to Russia's adapted war economy fueled by debt, then this core uncertainty around the U.S. project being rewritten in Quantico as we speak, and finally, the ongoing unresolved pain in Ukraine and the Middle East.
It really paints a picture of extreme volatility for the next year.
Yeah, the central theme feels like rapid shifts in power and just profound institutional uncertainty.
That's the synthesis, I think. If that traditional transatlantic security model, the one that basically shaped the post-Cold War world, if that's eroding.
Which it seems to be.
And if the U.S. military is being reshaped for unilateral, maybe aggressive action, it leaves this huge destabilizing power vacuum.
So what's the biggest takeaway? The most pressing question?
For me, especially reading that RNS 2025 analysis, it comes down to a critical, urgent question for Europeans. Given what they call this accelerated security degradation, and given the political shift in the U.S., how fast can Europe actually pivot?
Pivot from what to what?
From being a security consumer, mostly reliant on the U.S., to becoming a genuine autonomous defense producer. That ability to pivot, or maybe the failure to do it quickly enough, that's what will likely define the security landscape for the next year.
And determine if Europe can withstand the very pressures we started with today.
Exactly. It's an unavoidable question for every European capital right now.
A stark thought to end on. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today.